On that note, I'll go ahead and thank everyone so much for joining us this evening. We are in conversation with Padgett Powell on his book, Indigo, Arm Wrestling, Snake Saving, and Some Things in Between. My name is Caitlin, and I'm with the Seminary Co-op bookstores in Chicago. Our stores were founded in 1961, and in 2019, they became the first not-for-profit bookstores whose mission is bookselling. That mission recognizes bookstores as fundamental civic institutions and allows us to work with like-minded partners on events like this one. Tonight, we're delighted to be partnering with BookPost. You can take advantage of our partnership with BookPost by spending $100 or more in our stores or online. Once you do that, you can send your receipt to our friends at BookPost, and you'll receive a free 3-month subscription to their Substack, which is full of author interviews, book reviews, and other literary treasures. We'll share a link in the chat so you can learn more about that partnership. And let me now introduce the presenters. Padgett Powell is the author of 6 novels, including The Interrogative Mood and Edisto, which was a finalist for the National Book Award, and 3 collections of stories. His writing has appeared in The New Yorker, Harper's, and the Paris Review, as well as in the Best American Short Stories and the Best American Sports Writing. He has received a Whiting Award, the Rome Fellowship in Literature from the American Academy of Arts and Letters, and the James Tate Black Prize for Fiction. He's joined in conversation this evening by Anne Kjellberg. Anne Kjellberg is the founding editor of BookPost, a newsletter-based book review delivery service. She was on the editorial staff of the New York Review of Books from 1988 to 2017, and in 2009, she founded the literary magazine Little Star. On top of that, she is the literary executor of poet Joseph Brodsky's estate. We're so very happy to have you both with us virtually this evening. And one final note about format. There will be time for audience Q&A at the end of our program. Make sure to use the chat function at the bottom of the screen to submit any questions you might have. And with that, I'll turn it over to Anne and Padgett.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. Oh, and I want to add also one more thing. If you buy a copy of Indigo, Padgett's book from Seminary Co-op, we will send you a little signed book plate, almost as though he had been there with you signing it. So I really encourage you to take advantage of that offer, and you can count that toward your $100 to get a subscription to BookPost. So Padgett, introduce us to your little friend there.
Well, I brought a character witness. This is a Patterdale Terrier, about 12 weeks old. Her name is Taliban Virus, because I bought her for my granddaughter, Helen Iris. Spelling is modified a little bit. And she's going to go to school and do her utmost to thwart the Taliban. That's part of the rationale here in her naming. I name dogs, we all name dogs whimsically in the beginning, and usually we like to let those names wear off, and then we give them their real names once we discover the real names. But this name, Taliban Virus, which began as a joke, has amazing sticking power, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to discard it as unsalubrious as it may be. So anyway, here she is, and she's here helping me tonight with stage fright and other problems. And when you hear some noise, she's either fighting her 40-pound husband or she's attacking her vanilla extract bottle and rambling it all around the house. So that's where we are here in Florida tonight so far. I'm putting her down
to withstand these threats.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to know more about Padgett and dogs, you can buy his book, in which they're featured, among many other things. I thought I'd start us off. Two essays from BookPost appear in Indigo, this book, which I'm going to hold up. I guess you guys will see it backwards, but it's quite beautiful, and there's a snake that we'll get to in a second. And the essays are about William Trevor and Peter Taylor, but they're a little bit outliers. A lot of the book is experiential, and the kind of the half of it that is about writers is about kind of being around them more than reviewing them. But since I'm a book review editor and you've actually written for BookPost, I thought I would ask you about the kind of book reviewing side first. because you express a lot of skepticism about writing book reviews. And it struck me that you also drew a lot when you did finally, this book of essays is the first in your long career as a writer. Most of your work is as a writer of fiction. It's not something that writing essays isn't something that you've returned to a lot, but you've done from time to time. And it seems to me when you write about other writers, you draw a lot on your experience as a teacher, and you write a lot about it. And I wondered if when you write about other writers, it's informed by your life as a teacher or what teaching has brought to the way that you read and talk about reading.
Well, honestly, I'll say I don't. My answer is I don't know too much of what just preceded. I'm not skeptical about book reviewing. We could use some good book reviewing in the world. What I'm skeptical about is my position in doing it. I have no business reviewing a book, which is why in both of the pieces under discussion here or under reference, there are no book reviews. There's no real book reviewing. I'm very careful to be askance and get off path and go tangential or worse and stay away from the actual matter of reviewing a book. I think I say in one of those pieces as a joke, a review of a book doesn't do a man or a woman any good. What might do good is to, if you know that person's character, to slur it a little bit in an interesting way for the benefit of a reader of a book that might have been produced by that person. The teaching comes up when it comes up because I was a school marm for a frightening and debilitating period of 34 years, somewhat against my will, which is to say, not that I was unwilling to do it, it's that I didn't want to do it to begin with. Once I was in it, I committed and I did it as well as I could, and I enjoyed the fiction that which can't be taught can actually be taught if you're lucky and smart and have some talent to work with. And we were pretty successful at Florida getting that talent and making that talent. And I love it, any opportunity to put our line of progeny up against anybody's. I would love to go toe to toe with Iowa. But that passed, as things do, and it's over, and I'm glad it's over. And now I'm creeping toward the grave in a better state of mind. So we've wrapped it up. That career's done.
Well, you wrote a great piece after you finished the manuscript for Indigo. You wrote a great piece that you published in Book Post called F the Classics, about the benefits of reading books that are not very good. And one of the things I loved about it is that I should let you talk about it, but that, when you compare writing book reviews to teaching, I thought about putting this essay forward as a book review or as an article about books rather than something that's part of a classroom. The thing that these two situations have in common is that you're trying to open up or wake up in people new ways of reading. And I think that it sounds like part of the way you taught was to invite your students to read other people in new ways, or to discover things in themselves by reading in new ways. And these kind of not so great books, you were arguing, are in some ways more they leave space for a person to grow into.
Well,
whoa, there you go. As promised.
Yeah, she was 6 feet from him, and this was a different thing. I think something scared her at the door. I'm not sure what that was all about.
An alligator?
It wasn't terrorism on his part. She's completely unharmed. She ran 40 miles an hour, 2 rooms, and now she's happily biting him in the face. So everything's fine. Your description, your framing of that question is again putting things in too high-minded a light. I have endorsed reading books regarded as inferior because I find that they allow, to put it bluntly, they allow a learning writer see a chance for herself to do it. Whereas if you're shown War and Peace or Absalom or Madame Bovary and told to do it, your proper response is going to be to shrug and wring your hands and leave. You're not going to do it. But if you're shown, say, that book by Flaubert that Hemingway hated, Pécuchet and what is that title? If you're shown something that wobbles, Bouvard and Pécuchet, and forget Absalom and read, say, The Wild Palms. Read something distinctly minor and bent and insignificant, and read not Cat on a Hot Tin Roof or Streetcar Named Desire, but read A Perfect Analysis given by a parrot, or read something wherein Tennessee Williams has lost his mind after the 60s, and you say to yourself, I could do that. I can do that right there. I can do that. And that for me was always liberating. And the matter of reading badly is also helpful. Who doesn't like to read trash? You know, you don't, come on, we have to have relief. And, you know, people early, they sometimes get fixated on bad writers. And they love a certain bad writer. And I'm going to, here's an example. I love Norman Mailer, who is not a bad writer. But you come to discover, after your teenage affections begin to run thin, you come to discover for every Mailer, there's a Roth. And for a Roth, there's a Bellow. And you upgrade, at least in a kind of theoretical universe. But what was wrong with loving the antics of old Norman? Nothing. It's what showed you the what can be done in freedom, to use the wrong word. Get with it. Have some fun. The classics will shut you down. Whoa. She's 6 feet away. He's yelling, hey, hush up. No, he's not hurting you.
Yeah.
I may have to
I think that our whole reading culture could use more, like, I mean, we see this now in bookstores, more of an embrace of genre and the fun ways of reading as being like material connected as part of the whole universe of a reading life.
Like, you know, like detective fiction, noir. Noir is a category of writing that is denigrated as insignificant and minor, but it has also enjoyed huge celebrity because very good writers get into it, and you can have some very good reading in reading that stuff because it's fun, and often you get a congruence of good writing where it's not supposed to be with the form. Take Dash Hammett. It's hard to find a better writer than him for hardball correctitude, and yet he's practicing this form, this genre that's not supposed to be that hot, but it is. Anyway, I've got.
Well, I have one for the chat, Caitlin. I completely forgot to bring up Charles Willeford.
Yeah.
Padgett also wrote to us about a piece called Charles Willeford, Known Pulpist. I'll find a link for you guys and share it. about the pleasures of pulp. Well, the book at hand is not totally 100% about books and reading, and
Thank God.
I felt like it was wonderfully bookended by these two signature pieces. The first one about a championship arm wrestler named Cleve Dean, and the last one about hunting for an endangered snake called the Indigo, which is a huge snake. They're like, what's the at adult size, like a 6-foot snake, right?
They can go 8 feet. It is a giant purple friendly snake. It's almost a Disney-esque animal. Were it not for the pallor of the tragedy of its extinction, it would be a Disney animal. It's improbably friendly, and it's just breathtakingly beautiful. And I think the phrase might be preternaturally gentle with a man. He won't bite a person. It's a strange animal with weird mammalian characteristics. Mammalian digestive system. You can hear it flushing within the animal. It eats frequently, defecates frequently. The huge complaint by people who keep them is cleaning up after them. It's like a puppy. It's just like a puppy, except it's 8 feet long.
The Indigo piece had the feeling of something that you had thought about for a long time, kind of more than any of the other ones. That was like a childhood fascination for you, right? Meeting.
Yeah, I saw my first Indigo when I was 12 years old. There's a photo in the book of me holding that snake in the Jacksonville Zoo in 1964, I think, or 63. And ever since that point, I looked for one in the wild and couldn't find one. And I was coming up on looking for 50 years. And I decided if I really wanted to see one in the wild, I'd better get professional help, which I did do. And a year and a half after establishing professional help, I saw one. That's how long it took.
Wow.
Under the guidance of pros. And I did see them. And I have no idea how hard, really statistically speaking, it is to see them, because I've got a biased view of the situation. But I don't think that there can't be more than a few thousand of them left, if that. It's a bad situation.
Well, it sounded like you had to go to special places to find them.
What you do is you go to the remnants of longleaf pine forests, which have gopher burrows in them. The gopher tortoise itself is endangered and protected, just as the indigo is. It's rarer and rarer. As its home becomes rarer and rarer, it's a refuge for this indigo snake, and, by the way, 300 other species that enjoy the epithet commensals, a term I've not quite run an etymology on, but there are 300 commensals down these holes, and the indigo snake is one of them. And if you wipe out these holes, which can be done by, say, an armadillo, you wipe out the 300 commensals and the indigo snake and the gopher tortoise. The burrows can be wiped out by an armadillo or a bulldozer. So, a house, anything. And that's the real danger, that they have no place to live. There's a fellow in the book named Fred Sully, whom I can't find, who saw them being destroyed in the development of Orlando in the 60s. And he said they had nowhere to go. And he started taking them home from his construction job that was doing the construction. And he would take them home and let them go in his house and raise them, keep them. And he said of the one that he named Big Guy, who got to be 8 feet, he said, Big Guy was smarter than any cat I ever had.
Wow.
And that's effective, because you imagine this guy probably has had 20 cats. He's an old, friendly redneck, and he had cats. And he also said something really strange. He said, all the indigos I took home and gave, sucker or two died of colon cancers. And he said it was because he had a roommate who had the place fumigated for bugs.
Oh,
And that insecticide killed his snakes in the long run.
oh, how awful.
It's a rough world. It's a rough world out there.
Well, it seems to me a lot of these pieces show this kind of loving affection for bits of the world that are vanishing and threatened, but not necessarily cute, things that are that don't that people don't snuggle up to, but yet you kind of recognize their necessity or
Yeah. I guess I can't some other animals in the book, but I can't.
well, Cleve Dean, he seemed to me a lot like the Indigo because he's both big and strong and also gentle and kind of kind and harmless in a way. Or
yeah, no, Cleve was extraordinarily gentle. People would say that of him. He'd be up there breaking somebody's arm, and the arm wrestlers in the crowd would be saying, Cleve is such a gentle guy. He's such a gentle dude, so laid back. And he was just so powerful and so large that he didn't need bravura. He didn't have any use for it. He was an interesting fellow. Really
I wanted
was.
to ask you to read a bit. Would you? Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I just told you he's left us. He's gone.
Oh no.
Yeah, I don't think when you weigh over 500 pounds, you're expected to make it a long time. It's the system has been pushed beyond its limits, and at points, Cleve had weighed, it is thought, 750 pounds.
Oh.
It's difficult to say because, as I discovered when I was with him, he rarely knew how much he actually weighed because it's difficult to weigh yourself when you get that heavy. There aren't adequate scales for it. You can take your truck to a truck scale and weigh the truck and you in it, and you can get out of the truck and weigh the truck and do a tear, but it isn't precise. And if you go to the bathroom scale at 550 plus pounds, you crush it and you smash it, So Cleve was guessing how much he weighed, but he weighed a lot, and that just doesn't sustain over time. You want me to read something on page 9?
Page 9, the description of his method.
Cleve Dean credits an arm wrestler named Ricky Vyers with starting to develop the top roll. But that's all he had done was start it. And I just took it and developed different methods of it, different ways of gripping. He also brought in the notion of adaptability. Most arm wrestlers, he says, stick with what works for them 75% of the time. They don't try new things. In the hand and the positioning alone, there could be 25 citable variables. Now, how many variables that are uncitable would be hard for me to even tell you. I could actually watch a guy pulling and see 25 different changes in his style in a matter of 3 seconds. That's just the way the hand can go. The way the fingers are setting, the way the hand is cocked, the way the thumb is presented in the grip, where the pressure is going to be coming to or from, who-wee. These variances of position and motion and counter motion are difficult to think of and talk of discreetly. It would be hard for me to tell another arm wrestler these things. It's one big blanket. It doesn't have an end to it. It's just a round blanket. And you got to draw from it whatever you need at the time. It can't be, well, I'm gonna make this move, because in the first place, you're going against people, and people can change their mind in a millisecond. If you can adapt and wield this blanket of moves in 3 seconds against forces that can break your arm, most common are spiral fractures of the humerus, twist a piece of chalk until it snaps to get an idea, and avulsion fractures of the medial epicondyle, a bone from bone ripping off of the knob at the bottom inside of the humerus, to which all flexor muscles of the forearm attach. You are a rare bird. Arm wrestling's got to be something you do instinctively. It can't be something you got to think about. If you have to think about it, it's done took too long. It's over with. It's like breathing or opening your eyes.
I just found that the most amazing thing. It's like a philosophy.
Yeah. This thing, the top roll that he's credited with inventing, that became, I think, the title of the movie that Sylvester Stallone did based on Cleve. And they wound up throwing Cleve out of the movie. They said because he wasn't a credible foil to Stallone, because he was too large, as if everything in a Sylvester Stallone movie is realistic and credible. The real reason Cleve got thrown out is because he was not a member of the Teamsters Union. And that movie became Teamster funded and so forth and had a bunch of connections. So Cleve got thrown out of the movie, but it was about him. It was his story. This whole idea of the top roll was something he did invent. And it's essentially a reversal of at the time, typical arm wrestling, which was called a hook and drag. And it's the most simple term, it's a counterclockwise rotation against somebody's arm, and the top roll was a clockwise rotation out of it. It's a little technical, and some of it's just talked about in the piece, but probably not very well, but better than I'm doing now. Let's move on.
Well, I just thought that it was a fantastic, it reminded me of an approach to the world, that instead of coming at it with a kind of an armamentarium and a set of plans, you respond and react to what you see. And it's like art. It's like a way of reacting to the world that you come across. And it reminded me how you quote Flannery O'Connor, who says, in Kung Fu, the big and necessary rule is to remain loose.
Right.
That is,
well, that's not quote her. That's not her.
Oh, it's in your essay about her. I'm sorry, that was my own myself. Yeah, and then, like in the essay about Trevor, you say that he finds 50 different stories, he finds 50 different forms. That it seems like.
Yes, I mean Trevor is so radically different formally from story to story that he had to have been deliberately setting out to do different things. I don't think that he, as heretical as this sounds, I don't think that he could have naturally developed that much formal disparity story to story without at least wanting to, without at least distracting himself, teasing himself with the possibility of, hey, what if I just do this? Like the news from Ireland, hey, what if I do 50 points of view and see how this goes? And there are in that story, there are points of view by everything in that story except the children's pets. And I don't know why I stopped there. You know, clearly I wouldn't stop there. The Taliban wouldn't stop there. Did you see something on the screen that looked alarming?
Me?
Yeah, I thought I saw something.
Oh no, that was
maybe
I lost my signal for a second.
Yeah, that's what I saw. I thought maybe Taliban had jerked the cable out or something.
No, it's it was all on my end. Well,
okay.
on this thing of being able to improvise and respond.
Yep.
Were you willing to read another little piece?
Oh yeah. Yeah. What would you?
On 221.
All right. let's see. I'm gonna put
I don't
I'm
know.
gonna
Is
put the
Taliban in the way there?
Taliban down. You said 221, but then the thing I thought you wanted was really 225. I think you and I may have a different.
Oh, I may have a proof.
Yeah, I think you do. This is a little section about an indigo snake in the field.
Yeah, where you say the snake advances a foot or so, his head clear of the
Right.
red bush. Have you got that?
Right. Yes, I do.
Oh, thank you.
I do. And this is the snake has been the snake that I've looked for 50 years has. Hey, no. The snake that I've looked for 50 years has just been shown me in some thin red weeds, and it's given to me. It's given to me to capture the snake. Hey, hush. Okay, be quiet. He advances yet still straight, not turning to the hole, but going around it more or less until I put the stick on the ground ahead of him. And he goes ahead and turns calmly, inevitably for the hole. And as he passes my outside foot and comes to my knee, I pick him up with my left hand and put down the stick in my right and get that hand on him too for support. And after looking 50 years, hey, and after looking 50 years for my extinct snake, it has crawled right to me. And I see that I have a style. I will not rush an indigo snake if I do not have to. You do not knock the door down and handcuff a reasonable man. You ask him to come into the station and he will. Is that what you wanted there?
Yeah,
Okay.
that again seemed to me, there was this common thread about a force and being responsive to the force, being kind of responsive to the world, and that's how you have a style. So, and there's also this great way that the story slows down at that moment. You know, at other moments when the snakes is getting away from you, I noticed how you sped it up, and there were.
Oh man, yeah. Those we had the snakes in South Florida that were acting like they were on another planet. They were so fast, which is part of that story. It's how once I get up into Georgia and start seeing the reasonable speed snakes, I'm unprepared, and I refuse to catch the first one because I think it's going to run like the South Florida snakes. Hey, come here, come here. She's barking at a shape or something has spooked her. This isn't internecine warfare. Yeah, she's not fighting Johnny. She's barking at a shape. Something's spooking her.
Well, we're almost to go into the questions part, but I wanted to ask one last thing. I don't know if this is an obnoxious question, but
well, I hope.
If maybe it's an obnoxious question, if there's anybody on here, and probably there isn't, who hasn't read your fiction, what would you recommend as a sort of passage through it, as a way in?
Well, you know, that question, let's be fully forthcoming. You showed me that question earlier and I saw it. And it's a good thing I did see it because I would have been flummoxed. But giving it some thought, I thought this. I don't want a person to try to read Edisto, and I wouldn't want a person to try to read The Interrogative Mood first. And The Interrogative Mood is the book that I would like to show Don Bartholomew, Were He Alive? But it's not where it's not where anyone should start. Somebody should start with something like Scarlatti and the Sinkhole, which is a funny, inferior, the kind of thing we were talking about earlier. It's not the best, but it's the best access. It's the best place for somebody to read me and say, I could do that. This guy might be all right. Let me see, if it gets better than this, because this is pretty good and it hit the spot and it's funny. Roy Blunt read part of that story at a book launch I had in New York, and it was not the book we were launching. Okay. He reads from a different book, and he reads part of that story, and it was so damn funny that I was a fool to take the stage after he read that. You know how the Who didn't want to go on stage after. Remember, the Who wouldn't go on after Hendrix. We're not playing after we're not playing. Well, that should have been my position. I should have just said, y'all go buy Roy's book and forget this. Anyway, he read from Scarlatti in the Sinkhole. There's an inspired little riff in it, and it's based on a real person. There's a famous set of murders going on in South Carolina right now called the Murdaugh murders, wherein a kid seems to have been killed, perhaps by a truck mirror hitting him in the head. Is one of the murders that's being attached to this family called the Murdaughs. And my kid, Scarlatti's model in human life, did get hit in the head with a truck mirror and suffered a little bit of brain damage, and made him extremely entertaining around us. As unfortunate as all this is, he was an amusing person to have around, and I took some liberties with him and wrote that story. So start with Scarlatti and the Sinkhole.
Thank you.
Yes.
I hope that wasn't too flummoxing. So Caitlin, you want to bring us in here? Should we have a look?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a few questions in the chat, and if anyone has more questions, please feel free to drop them in there. We've got one from Anthony that says, there are so many sentences I loved in the book. For example, in this quiet, corrected air on the porch, I watched the interesting lone figure of Bill Wegman continue on his troubled way untroubled. What do you tend to read essays for? Sentences or something else? And what are some essays you return to?
Well, my answer to Anthony is going to be defeatist and is going to disappoint him. I don't read essays, and I resist these being called essays. These are just what I would call pieces. Montaigne writes essays. I don't. And I can say, now that I'm thinking about it, I can adjust this and get less persnickety and answer him more generously. What I'm after when I write this way, which I find, by the way, exhausting vis-a-vis fiction, what I'm after is what I call the poetry of fact, which I think Ian Fraser coined. We've argued about it. I one time told him I coined it, and I think my position was absurd. He coined it. I also regard Ian Fraser and Alec Wilkinson as the true grandsons of Joseph Mitchell. This kind of writing, I think, is done best, as I've seen it, by Joseph Mitchell, Ian Fraser, and Alec Wilkinson, and that's what I want to do when I have to do this stuff. And the Cleve Dean piece was a conscious effort at making an Ian Fraser piece. I was consciously trying to essentially rip him off, and it's fun. It's hard. You might even slip up and do it in a passage or two. But for Anthony, that's who I'm sending you to: Joseph Mitchell first, and then his disciples, his grandchildren, Ian Fraser and Alec Wilkinson. Anthony Domestic.
You.
Okay.
And we've got another question from Eleanor, and they ask, how are indigo snakes faring against all the escaped or freed pythons? wreaking havoc on the Florida wildlife?
Well, the pythons are way down in the Everglades, and they're not moving up. They can't move up much because of the cold weather, and more importantly, the highways. That snake is not going to move a long way. And I would imagine that down there, if they are coming into contact, which is to say, if there are still numbers of indigos in the Everglades, and if there are, in fact, the numbers of pythons reputed to be, the indigos will be winning that fight. The indigos will be eating the pythons. The pythons will not be eating the indigos. The python is going to feed on a warm-blooded animal. The indigo will feed on anything it can run down and catch, which would mean, in this instance, a python up to about 6 feet long is in serious trouble if it runs into an indigo. In fact, it's gone. So that's how they're doing down there on that score.
Fascinating. And then there is one other question in here from Daniel, which I'm assuming there might be a story to. Daniel asks, how is it going with 9-finger writing? Daniel,
well, I wasn't going to write another book, I said, after this book. And in September, I broke up a dog brawl by inserting my finger into the mouth of my own dog without meaning to, or even knowing I did it. The proof was the tip of my finger on his back against a big safe that I had slammed him up against in controlling the brawl. The big safe was there because this was a big pot farm. And my dog, I was trying to prevent from hurting the pot farm guard dogs, which are Pyrenees and were not set up to fight my dog. And so I was being heroic, and my fingertip flew over, and I got it off of his back, and I held it in my hand, and the pot farm boss host came running over and said, "What the F is that?" And I said, "It's me." And he said, "Well, I guess you got to go to the hospital." I said, "I think I do." And so I went to the hospital, and I watched the Gators play Alabama from several TVs in the hospital. I was okay. But I got to thinking, well, maybe I should write another book. I'll write a 9-fingered book. I'll see if I can write a 9-fingered book, which, of course, I can, because I don't type with 10 fingers anyway. I don't even type. My mother told me to learn to type, and it was good advice. I should have learned it. Didn't, hunt and peck.
Oh, so you don't write longhand. No,
I did in the beginning write longhand, and I believed in it, and I thought there was something to the pace and it would be important. And then I would gradually write on a disc. I'd write something insignificant to me, like a book review, something that wasn't real. And then once you write something longhand, you got to transcribe it, and the typing of something already written is excruciating labor. And I got to where I didn't want to do it, so I started typing originally. I was thinking about this at your question about writing being an act of discovery. I think you said not coming into it with a set armamentarium of presumptions or something, which I'm not sure I understand that term, but I think what you meant was coming in with a big plan of known moves and a scheme and things. And do I write that way? No, I don't want to write that other way. The other way, which is, here's a blank piece of paper, put one word on it, another word on it. Now you've begun to control what the third word must be. You don't know where this is going, but you know that it should go according to certain ethos and certain rules of logic and certain rules of aesthetic. But you have no idea where this is going, which gives you the freedom to enjoy it. It also scares you, scary, which is why a lot of people don't write, and a lot of people don't write this way. But the idea of sitting down and writing that which is already known is an act of transcription, which would be just paralyzingly defeating, which is why I don't write in longhand. That would be typing what's known. The secondary act, not the primary. The primary, writing with the pencil, would still be fun, but not the next stage. And I got to where I wouldn't do it. So I started 3-finger typing. In fact, it's 3-finger typing, so 9 fingers,
Yeah, so that'll work.
Not a hill.
Not much.
Not
lost.
a hill for us. Yeah, not much lost. Yeah.
Well, there's this word that gets so overused, and people use it of you all the time. And I think there is a kind of a little bit of a like geographic prejudice there of like voice, which I find that word
right.
Exhausted. But
yeah,
I do feel as though in your pieces you set up an intonation or an idiom, and then you keep it going. It's like a high wire act, and you don't want to break it. And that's what sort of reminded me of Cleave's moves.
Well, you're interested when you write. You're interested in coherence. Coherence at several levels, and there's mood, there's logic, there's the writing. That which can't be taught can be taught if you reduce it to what it really is, which is making sense. That's what I again and again told students to do. I want you to just sit down, son, and make sense. You can do anything you want to do if this makes sense. It can make any kind of sense it wants to, but it must make sense. And this is liberating if you let the dictates of sense keep you coherent and keep it going where it needs to go, even though we don't know where that is and we don't care. It will have made sense getting there, and everything will be fine if it did make sense getting there. That sounds completely insupportable, what I just said. That's the most daft expression of it I've ever done. It's because my dog's gone silent.
I don't know. I thought it sounded pretty great. It sounds as though making sense is something internal. It's about being internally coherent.
Here's my fingertip right there. Fingertip. It's hard to see.
Goodness.
That's the finger.
They didn't sew it back on?
No, they didn't. It goes there. It goes right there. And they gave no thought to sewing it back on. I had it in a bowl of ice. I had it in a cereal bowl of ice. And I had my finger over the lip of the bowl. And the tip up. And I got to the hospital, and this long-haired surgeon, orthopedist, came in. He just said, "Stop worrying about it, son. I've got dogs myself." And he said, "I'm going to take you into surgery because I can clean it up better in there. Let's go." And there was no conversation about my thing, And I think it's because it would have been, I think it would have been some kind of surgical improbability. Is what I think. Let's not even talk about it. Yeah. He trimmed it up. He did a good job. And it was a really fun experience for all the humility and stupidity of sticking your finger into the carnassials of a predator. I had a fun medical experience with this. The phlebotomist guy, the guy that does the IV, he was incompetent, and he was also handing out the Dilaudid. So he put in a bad IV, and I asked him if I could have another Dilaudid. And he said, "You want another Dilaudid?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Okay." And he gave me one, and then the IV he put in was bad, and it blew up a balloon on my arm. And another nurse walked through and said, "You got a do-over, Christopher." But But I had 2 Dilaudids by that point and was watching the Gators in Alabama, so I was okay. It was okay. If this had happened when I was 25 years, I'd be upset, but I'm 70. How long do I have to live with 9 fingers? Not long, you know?
Well, and it's really 9 7/8.
Yeah, it's not exactly. It's not more than an eighth. It's not more than an eighth of a finger. There they are, right there.
Yeah, that's really quite a few fingers.
It's that. That's the difference right there. Yeah. Yeah.
Compliment.
It was a lot of profit for a little cost, really. It was an adventurous, wonderful time. I wish I hadn't been so stupid. I do. I wish I had just sat back and enjoyed the dog fight and watched this guy discover that his dogs aren't bad.
Too soft-hearted.
Yeah, yeah.
So Meg is asking what you're reading these days. Maybe we should wrap up with that.
Oh,
book recommendation?
I weirdly had an answer for that recently, and I don't know what the answer was. I'm personally not reading anything, but I recommended something really good a moment or two ago, and now I don't know what it is.
Joseph Mitchell?
No, though that's a constant recommendation, as would be William Trevor if you want to read some really, really good, well executed, proper looking fiction that is beneath the surface, really kinky and strange. William Trevor can't be beat. So let's go with that. Let's go with that. A formalist, a careful looking, well-mannered, sophisticated person who has interests that are naughty. He's interested in heroic people who are heroic in unheroic ways. Screen went weird. Are we done?
I think we're done. I just love the idea of a formalist who uses a different form every time.
He does.
That's the ultimate formalist.
Just read 10 of them. Read 10. This one's one person, one point of view. This one is one person with impaired point of view. So he has to bring in somebody 25 pages into the story and penetrate her head to let us know something that we cannot know because of the limited brain of the hero. And the brain is limited by alcohol. And then the next story is 50 view. Is this where we get the ideas of the children.
Well, thank you so much, Padgett. I really, really appreciate your doing this. I'm thrilled that this book has come out and that you've come out with us to celebrate it, and under the auspices of the great Seminary Co-op, which if you haven't been there, you should certainly make the trip. It's one of the great.
I'll go when I'm there next. I do more book business in Chicago than anywhere else, weirdly. I don't know how this happened, but in terms of publicity, I've done more in Chicago than anywhere in the country. It's weird.
It's a reedy city.
Yeah, must be.
Well, Anne and Padgett, thank you so much for joining us this evening. And thank you everyone who joined us as well. We hope to see you in the stores or at another virtual event very soon. You can find all of our events as well as more information about our book post partnership at semcoop.com. Thank you all so much and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Caitlin.